Parsonage of the Great Grace Tabernacle was not a home. It was a museum of forced perfection. The air was perpetually scrubbed clean with the scent of lemon oil and the heavy, suffocating weight of unsaid words. Amaka sat at the mahogany dining table, the silence so loud it made her ears ring. Her father, Pastor Ezekiel, sat at the head of the table like a king on a throne of judgment. He chewed his food with a slow rhythmic precision that matched the ticking of the grandfather clock. Across from him, Deaconess Abigail monitored Amaka's every move. "Your skirts were an inch too short in the choir rehearsal today, Amaka," Abigail said, her voice a sharp blade wrapped in velvet. "We are the first family. You are the standard for every young girl in this nation. Do not let the devil use you to embarrass the ministry." "Yes, Mommy," Amaka whispered, her eyes fixed on the grain of the wood. Inside, Amaka was a raging storm. At 20, she was treated like a 10-year-old. She had no smartphone, no social media, and no friends who weren't vetted by her father's security team. The electric fencing around the estate wasn't just to keep out thieves. It was to keep her spirit from escaping. They wanted a porcelain doll. They were about to get a hurricane. It had started 2 years ago. On the night of her 18th birthday, her parents had celebrated by holding a 6-hour prayer vigil for her soul. While other girls were out experiencing their first taste of adulthood, Amaka was kneeling on a cold floor, listening to her father pray against the spirit of Jezebel. That night, something snapped. She found an old smartphone left behind by a dismissed house help. She hid it in the vents of her bathroom. Through that small screen, she saw a world of color, music, and bodies that weren't hidden under layers of cotton. One night, she experimented. She took a pair of scissors to one of her long church skirts, hacking it until it barely covered her thighs. She used a marker to draw eyeliner, looking in the mirror. She didn't see the daughter of Zion. She saw a woman with a figure-8 body. It was a masterpiece of dangerous curves. Her waist was tiny, making her wide hips and protruding breasts look like a challenge to the world. She climbed the fence that night just to see the street lights. A man in a sleek car had pulled over, offering her a ride and a compliment that felt like water in a desert. "You're too beautiful to be walking alone, Angel. A girl with a body like yours belongs in the VIP." The thrill of being seen, not as a pastor's project but as a woman, was more addictive than any drug. The first time she accepted money, it wasn't because she was poor. It was because the money was proof that she had value outside the altar. The moment she stepped inside the club, the fear vanished. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, sweat, and freedom. The bars of a physical force thumping against her chest, synchronizing with her heartbeat. As she walked towards the bar, the room seemed to shift. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned in a slow, synchronized wave. For 18 years, she had been looked at as a symbol of pity, but now she was being looked at as a woman. The stares were intoxicating, a mixture of raw lust, curiosity, and awe. She felt a surge of power, so intense it made her dizzy. Every pair of eyes that trailed down her small waist to the curve of her hips was a blow against her father's iron rules. A man in the corner draped in gold chains raised his glass to her, his eyes lingering on the way her skimpy skirt rolled up as she moved. She wasn't Amaka the pastor's daughter. She was a goddess of the night. The attention was a drug, and she was already addicted. By 20, the transformation was a well-oiled machine. The clock struck 12:15 a.m. Amaka waited until the rhythmic thud of her father's knees hitting the floor for his midnight intercession ceased. She knew his routine: 20 minutes of prayer, then a sleep so deep it was almost a trance. She moved like a ghost. Behind the false panel in her walk-in closet lay her true identity. She stripped off the high-necked cotton gown that felt like a shroud. She pulled on a crimson spandex dress that clung to her like a second skin. It was cut so low it exposed the rise of her protruding breast. Dusted with gold-flecked powder, she snapped on a waist-length wig and painted her lips a blood red. Scaling the back wall was her nightly ritual of rebellion. On the other side, a blacked-out SUV waited. The transition was complete. The Platinum Club was a den of neon and high-stakes vice. Amaka walked in, the rhythmic sway of her wide hips causing a physical ripple through the crowd. Chief Ojo was waiting. He was a pillar of her father's church, a man who gave millions to the building fund. "Misty," he growled, his hand immediately finding the curve of her hip. If only the congregation could see the pastor's pride and joy now. "You look more delicious every time. That waist is a miracle of its own." Amaka leaned in, her breast pressing against his expensive linen shirt. "They only see what they are told to see, Chief. My father preaches about the fire of hell, but he doesn't know the fire I carry." She took his money and felt a sick sense of triumph. She was using the very wealth that built her prison to fund her secret life. Senator Bello was a man who moved through the world with the crushing weight of authority. He didn't want the noise of the clubs. He wanted the silence of his private estate. He would send a car with diplomatic plates to pick Amaka up, a move that made her feel untouchable. He was a man of dark appetites, obsessed with the geometry of her body. He would make her stand by the fireplace, the light flickering against her skin as he sat in his leather chair. "Look at you," he would murmur, his voice like gravel. A waist like a ring, and hips like the earth. A body built for a king, hidden in the house of a priest. With the senator, there was no pretense of romance. It was power. He liked the taboo of her, knowing that while her father was a national TV calling for the moral rejuvenation of the country, his daughter was draped in sheer lace in a senator's bedroom. He paid her in foreign currency, providing a level of wealth that began to make Amaka feel like she was above any consequence. But the senator was the one who first taught her how to be cold. He taught her that everyone had a price, and that loyalty was just a word used by people who couldn't afford a lawyer. Then there was Marcus. He was a young tech billionaire, brilliant, handsome, and cold as an algorithm. Unlike the older men, Marcus didn't just want her body, he wanted her presence. He would fly Amaka to a private villa in Lekki, a place where the walls were glass and the world felt infinitely far away. For the first time, Amaka felt a dangerous flickering of real emotion. She loved the way Marcus looked at her, not as a vessel of honor or a sinful hookup, but as a partner in a high-stakes game. He was the one who bought her the sheer, lace-up bodysuit that emphasized her small waist and protruding chest. When he traced the line of her wide hips, he whispered things about aesthetic perfection that Amaka mistook for affection. "I could give you the world, Amaka," he had told her one night as they watched the sunrise over the Atlantic. "You don't belong in that dusty parsonage." She began to dream. She stopped seeing him as a client and started seeing him as an exit strategy. She believed his words. She felt special. She was so blinded by the feelings she had developed for him that she became careless. She stopped being the cold, calculating Misty and became a girl in love. When the nausea started, Amaka wasn't afraid. She thought Marcus would be the one to finally take her away. She thought his baby, their baby, would be the final bridge between their two worlds. She went to see Marcus at his penthouse, her heart full of a terrifying hope. But the moment she said the words, "I'm pregnant," the air in the room turned to ice. Marcus didn't hold her. He didn't smile. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. "That wasn't the deal, Amaka. I pay for perfection, not for technical glitches." "Marcus, I thought we had something. I thought you loved me," she stammered, the words sounding pathetic even to her own ears. He turned around, and his eyes were like two pieces of glass. "I loved the image of you. I love the figure-8 body and the small waist. I don't love responsibly. You have money. Go to a clinic. Fix it. If I see you again with a stomach, consider our contract terminated." He had his security escort her out. Desperate to regain his favor, she went to her usual back alley doctor. The usual doctor, quickly. But the doctor shook his head after the scan. "Amaka, the scarring from your previous procedures is too much. The embryo has attached to the wall in a way that makes surgery fatal. If I try to remove this child, you will bleed out. You have to carry this." She tried to call Marcus. He had blocked her number. She tried to go to his office. His secretary told her she was no longer on the visitors list. The man who had promised her the world had vanished the moment she became inconvenient. The next 3 months was a nightmare of fabric and pain. Her figure-8 line began to blur. She bought industrial-grade medical corsets. Wrapping them so tightly, her ribs began to bruise. She wore oversized choir robes, claiming she was on a Daniel fast. Her mother, Abigail, was delighted. "Look at her," she told the other deaconesses. "My Amaka is wasting away for the Lord. Such devotion." But behind the robes, Amaka was screaming. Every time the baby kicked, she felt the ghost of Marcus Cole's eyes. She had traded her soul for a man who didn't even see her as human. The Night of 7 Wonders was televised to millions. Amaka was the lead soloist. As she stood on the platform, the stage lights felt like the fire of judgment. The corset was a vice. As she hit the final note of the anthem, her vision fragmented. The corset stay snapped with a sound like a pistol shot. Amaka collapsed, tumbling down the marble steps. The fabric of her robes caught on the pulpit and tore away. The bandages unraveled across the white marble there. In high definition, was the unmistakable swell of a 6-month pregnancy. The silence was more violent than any scream. Pastor Ezekiel stood frozen. Abigail fainted. The virtuous maiden was dead. The fallout was total. The church collapsed. The cage of Ezekiel became a national meme. Weeks later, Amaka sat in the nursery of the parsonage, now a house of ghosts. Her father was a broken man, stripped of his title. Her mother spent her days weeping for her lost reputation. Amaka looked at her reflection. The small waist was gone. The body was heavy with the consequence of her nights. She looked at a news clipping on her floor. There was Marcus, smiling at a gala with a new Misty on his arm. Another girl was a figure-8 body and a small waist. Another girl with a figure-8 body and a small waist. She realized that was just a replaceable part in his machine. She had sought freedom in a man who was just as much a jailer as her father. Only his cage was built of gold instead of religion. She was left with the ruins of her life. a child that reminded her of her betrayal, and the silence of a house that no longer had any hymns to sing.